1 month into Operation Epic Fury, the war just got bigger. Iran has been battering Israel with missiles every single day since February 28th. Hezbollah has been firing from Lebanon in the north, and Israeli cities have been absorbing strikes on their power plants, residential streets, and shelters for 30 days straight. And then, on the war's 1-month anniversary, Yemen's Houthi rebels announced their entry into the conflict by firing a barrage of ballistic missiles at southern Israel, opening a brand new front in a war that Trump had spent the week telling the American public was close to ending. The Houthis had been watching from the sidelines for a month, building their rationale, and on Saturday morning they pulled the trigger. A new front, a new missile source, and a second maritime chokepoint now sitting directly in the crosshairs. The Houthi entry was not a surprise to anyone who had been paying attention. Their military spokesman Yahya Sari had broadcast a warning on Friday night that the group's fingers were on the trigger for direct military intervention if new alliances joined Washington and Israel against Iran, or if the Red Sea was used for hostile operations against the Islamic Republic. Less than 24 hours after issuing that warning, they launched. Sari confirmed the attack on Al-Masura, the Houthi satellite network, saying the missiles had targeted sensitive Israeli military sites and that operations would continue until the aggression against all fronts of the resistance ceases. Israel's air defenses intercepted the first ballistic missile over southern Israel, with sirens sounding across Beersheba and the surrounding region. A second cruise missile was shot down over the Red Sea hours later. A suspected Houthi drone was filmed being intercepted over Eilat. No casualties were reported from the Houthi strikes, but the significance of Saturday had nothing to do with the damage count. It had everything to do with what comes next, because the Houthis entering this war are not simply adding one more voice to a crowded battlefield. They are sitting directly on top of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the narrow waterway between the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, through which ships must pass to reach the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. The Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has effectively closed at the northern end of the Persian Gulf, handles roughly a fifth of the world's seaborne oil. The Bab el-Mandeb at the southern end handles another critical volume of global trade, and the Houthis demonstrated between November 2023 and January 2025 that they are both willing and able to make life extraordinarily difficult for commercial shipping in that corridor, attacking over 100 merchant vessels during that period and forcing global shipping, companies including Maersk to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope at enormous additional cost. The Deputy Information Minister Mohammed Mansour told local media on Saturday that closing the Bab el-Mandeb is among the group's options. If they follow through, the world's two most critical maritime energy choke points will be simultaneously under threat from Iranian-aligned forces, a scenario that no amount of US naval presence has yet been able to prevent. Meanwhile, the broader picture across Israel on Saturday reflected a conflict that is grinding harder into its second month than almost anyone who launched it had anticipated. Israeli police detained protesters in Tel Aviv during demonstrations calling for an end to the war, with thousands turning out on the war's 1-month anniversary in what Israeli media described as growing public frustration with a conflict that was supposed to be over by now. Iran fired 6 ballistic missiles and 29 drones at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia on Friday alone, wounding at least 15 US troops, including 5 seriously, and the base had already been struck twice earlier in the week, with a previous attack wounding 14 additional American personnel. More than 24 US troops have now been wounded at that single base in the past week, a number that has not been prominently featured in White House briefings about the war's progress. Thousands more US sailors and Marines arrived in the Middle East on Saturday, with speculation mounting that they may be deployed to seize Iran's Karg Island, which handles roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports and sits in the northern Persian Gulf. Israel struck what it described as critical Iranian defense production sites in the heart of Tehran on Friday, targeting facilities where ballistic missiles and other weapons are manufactured, alongside missile launchers and storage sites in western Iran. Witnesses in eastern Tehran reported a partial power outage following the strikes. Iran's Atomic Energy Organization confirmed that the Shahid Kondab heavy water complex in Arak and the Ardakan yellowcake production plant in Yazdi province were both hit, while insisting there was no risk of contamination and no casualties. Yellowcake is concentrated uranium after raw ore is processed, and heavy water is used as a moderator in nuclear reactors. The Israeli military described the Yazdi plant strike as a major blow to Iran's nuclear program. The IAEA is monitoring both sites. The death toll across the region after 30 days of Operation Epic Fury has passed thresholds that the war's architects have not been eager to publicize. Iran's Red Crescent reported at least 1,900 people killed in Iran since February 28, with Iran's foreign minister saying earlier in the conflict that hundreds of civilians, including more than 200 children, had been killed. Lebanon's health ministry reported at least 1,199 deaths in Israeli strikes since March 2nd, with at least 124 children among them. Iraq has reported at least 99 killed. Deaths have also been recorded in the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, the West Bank, Oman, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. 15 Israelis have been killed by Iranian strikes. More than 24 American troops have been wounded, with the killed in action figure at 13. What Saturday revealed, more than anything else, is the gap between the diplomatic narrative being constructed in Washington and the military reality being constructed on the ground. Trump said talks were going very well and that the conflict was close to ending. Iran denied any talks were taking place and fired 6 missiles and 29 drones at a base 60 miles from Riyadh. The Houthis, who had watched a full month pass without joining, chose the war's 1-month anniversary to make their entrance and announced that their operations would continue until the aggression stops. Research analyst Bridget Toomey noted that the Houthi decision to target Israel at this moment was likely a calculated move to signal they remain a credible threat and to add to Iran's leverage in any eventual negotiations. Jonathan Shanzer, watching the same development, said the concern now is whether the Houthis use this opportunity to try to block the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and that with this latest development, the conflict could be widening more significantly. A month in, Operation Epic Fury has not ended the Iranian government, has not reopened the Strait of Hormuz, has not produced a ceasefire that Iran has agreed to, and has not prevented the gradual entry of Iran's regional proxies into direct participation in the war. What it has produced is a conflict that now spans Iran, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and 6 Gulf states simultaneously, with 2 of the world's most critical maritime choke points under threat, US troops being wounded in Saudi Arabia, in numbers that are not being announced at press conferences, and a Houthi movement that spent a month on the sidelines and chose the war's 1-month anniversary to make clear that the sidelines were never going to be permanent. Trump's deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz expires on April 6th. The Houthis entered the war on March 28th. The gap between those 2 dates is 9 days, and the question of what fills them is the one that every government in the region is now trying to answer.